Hi folks, have you ever encountered a location or a building that you just got a strange vibe off of? It could be positive or negative, but you felt an uncanny connection to that location. Well, for me, that building happened to be in the city of Charleston, and for 40 plus years, I always had a feeling of helplessness, hopelessness, and great sorrow every time I walked by it. Never knew what it was, never knew why. And well, there is a ghost tale associated with it, but not much of one. See, as long as the building was occupied, those third floor doors on each end would open up. It would not stay closed as long as somebody was in the building. Not much of a ghost tale. And of course, it was an Italian restaurant in the 1990s, and nobody cares about ghost tales of mediocre undercooked pasta. So, not much to say. So, I just went on about my business. And last year, I decided to stop there. As I walked by it, I actually had that feeling again, and I stopped. I lit up a cigar, and I stood on the corner, and I wondered what it was about that building. And at that point, I decided to do some research. And this is what I found. You never know what you walk by every single day. February 26th of 1898, a man by the name of Theodore Nickmeyer goes to work that night. He's a Charleston City fireman. He goes over to the Meeting Street station. And he's there, and at 2:15 in the morning, he has to respond to a fire at this location. Now, this location was a tenement home at the time, meaning there was a family on each floor, one on the first floor, one on the second, one on the third. What has happened is two city police officers are walking a beat through the market. They see the smoke, they investigate, they see the flames. They force entry through the first floor door and evacuate that first family. Then they re-enter, and they're driven out by the flames and the smoke. Actually, Officer Fox gets some smoke inhalation, and they back out. And as they do, they realize the second floor family has moved out to the balcony. They respond over there with bystanders, and the family starts dropping their children over the balcony to the officers. And then the second floor family crawls down. The officers and bystanders climb up those poles and those railings and get to that third floor balcony. They walk over to the door, try to force entry. The doorknob is so hot they can't handle it. Because of the heat, the door has expanded and it's swollen into the frame, and they can't get it to budge. And they hear the pounding and the screaming and the fear and the horror on the other side of that door, but they can't get it to move. At the same time, Theodore Nickmeyer arrives with the fire chief. He throws a ladder up the side of the building, climbs up that ladder, knocks out the far right window on the third floor. And he reaches in through that smoke and those flames, and he grabs a small child, pulls the child out onto the ladder with him. At that point, the fire chief yells, "Restrain those men. Do not let them force entry." Why? Because it's going to create a backdraft. It's going to create a backdraft, and it's going to incinerate everything through the building and kill everybody on that balcony. Well, those officers come back down, and they're taken across the street, and they're restrained. And that fireman, Theodore Nickmeyer, comes down with that deceased child in his arms, and he walks straight over to the fire chief and looks him in the eye and says, "My God, Chief, why did you let my family die?" It's Theodore Nickmeyer's family, the fireman's family, is on that third floor. They take him across the street and they restrain him. And those police officers and that fireman watch in horror as his family perishes up there on that third floor. The screams finally die down, and then they bring out the deceased one by one. Who do they bring out? Theodore Nickmeyer's wife, Rebecca, 35, and then they begin to bring out his children. Josephine, 17, Katie, 16, Lenora, 9, Francis, 6, Lily Mae, 3, and the one he brought out himself was his 1-month-old daughter, Anna, because he knew where the crib was. Also perishing in the fire was his wife's brothers, Albert O'Neill, 16, and Caswell O'Neill, 14. They had been in the Charleston City orphanage till Christmas. They were able to get them out, celebrate Christmas with them, only to have them die in this fire 2 months later. In total, Theodore Nickmeyer stood across the street and heard and watched 9 members of his family die in that fire. He actually lost another member of his family to another fire in the city of Charleston. His brother had also been a city fireman killed on the line of duty. So this man lost 10 members of his family to 2 fires in the city of Charleston, And the man remained a fireman until the day he died. Much respect. I don't know if I could do that. I don't know if I had that in me. Now, this man watched 9 members of his family die from across the street. Folks, I don't think those doors are kept open because of the people that perished in there, keeping them open. I think they're kept open by those first responders that had to stand across the street and watch in horror as they could do nothing to help them. And folks, having been a first responder, I've been in that situation. And I think that was the connection, and that they knew one day I would look into it. And I did. And when I found out this information, I went back to Theodore Nickmeyer's home, and I told him that every time I go by there, every time I had the opportunity to tell the tale, I would mention all his family's names, and I would not let them be forgotten again. Can you imagine what it would be like to stand across the street and watch 9 members of your family perish, and then discover that they're lost to history too? People walk by it for 40 plus years and never know why those doors will not stay closed. So I made them a promise I would keep their names honored. I also found out where they were buried. They were actually buried in one small grave, 9 people, one pretty small grave in Bethany Cemetery. And on February 26th of 2023, I went and cleared that area off and put flowers for the first time. And as long as I'm living, I will make sure there are flowers placed on that grave in honor of those 9 people as long as I'm around. And, well, now it seems to be that those doors finally stay shut.